President Trump is speaking about the recent stock market volatility. Eamon Javers joins us now with more. Hey, Eamon.
Yeah, good morning, Joe. In an interview with Fox News yesterday, President Trump addressed last week's stock market turmoil caused by confusion around his tariff agenda. In one exchange, the president suggested that calls by the business community for clarity on that policy are just a talking point for the big globalists. Here's what he said.
I think that they say that. You know, it sounds good to say. But for years, the globalists, the big globalists, have been ripping off the United States.
And asked if he's okay with the stock market going down, the president dismissed the idea of short-term focusing on the stock market.
What I have to do is build a strong country. You can't really watch the stock market. If you look at China, they have a 100-year perspective. We have a quarter. We go by quarters.
That's true.
And you can't go by that.
Now, that's a striking departure in approach from the first Trump administration when cabinet members suggested that the stock market was a good barometer for how well the administration was performing. But this is a much more populist Trump administration than in the first term. And you see that reflected by the president now dismissing stock market losses as pain for globalists, not his voter base. We'll see if Trump continues that approach later today when he's expected to meet with top technology executives at the White House. We expect the discussion there will include the president's tariff agenda, also his call to repeal the Bipartisan CHIPS Act. And guys, Andrew, I was thinking about this morning. You and I were at a dinner in New York on Thursday night where the discussion was largely around this. Just how populist is this Trump administration and how much do these stock market losses move the needle inside this White House? And I think it's a different calculation this time than it was last time around.
So it may be different in this particular moment. The question is, if this were to persist for several months or longer, how you think that changes the dynamic, which is to say, if the stock market continues to fall as you were to walk into midterms, for example, does that change what they want to do, or do you think that they're all in?
So I think there's an intellectual group who are all in, of populist, conservative economics folks who look at this and say what we need to do is entirely restructure the U.S. economy. And the focus for too many years, too many decades, has been on lowering prices, not on families and communities. And that's really the central unit of the economy, should be the family, not prices. And you heard Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, say this last week, you know, that the ideal of the American dream is not about access to low prices, it's about other things. That's that sort of worldview. The question is how much pain Trump himself is willing to tolerate. I think the answer is he's willing to tolerate a lot more pain on the stock market, as you just heard him say, this time around than he was last time. But I don't think that's indefinite, right? I think there's some threshold larger than it was last time around at which the president might respond to stock market losses by changing course politically. I think we've got a ways to go, though, before that happens.
Yeah, it's not just how deep, but also how long. You know,
and he can point to interest rates too, Eamon, which don't always, you know, the bonds themselves don't always sync up with equities, and you could actually say, you know, equities coming down, and as a result, bond prices go up with the safety, and then he would immediately talk about mortgage rates and consumer loans and all the benefits that come from that. So you can kind of have, you can pick something else to brag about if the stock market is not cooperating.
Yeah. And it's largely about jobs, right? I mean, so one conservative economist looked at this and said to me, imagine rolling back the clock to 1990 and telling somebody in a small town in the American heartland, look, in the future, your TV will cost 10 times less, but your children are going to have to move out of your town because there won't be any work for them. Would you take that deal? And he said that, you know, 90% of Americans would not take that deal, even if it meant cheaper TVs because of the devastation of their community.
Can you get the jobs back, especially when you're talking about automation of factories at this point? I mean, and how long it takes to put some of those
things in. That's the huge gamble.
How big a
that this administration is
TV?
making.
Like a 75-incher, or I mean, what are we talking
debating
about?
Whether you'd take the deal?
I mean, no, I would not.
I mean, how many kids do you have, right? I mean, you know, it's that calculation too.
Exactly. Oh my God. These are really big questions when you think about it, Eamon. And you know, here we are. We're in our little gilded cage. I mean, it really was hollowed out, the center of the country, and we do love those cheap prices, but it came at a. We'll see if prices really do rise, and it takes time to bring jobs back, and one might happen before the other, and we'll see what our actual resolve is. For
Which I think you get
but
back.
I think
this
that's what
reminds
Trump,
me. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Eamon.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's what Trump was talking about in that soundbite, where he said what you have to do is build a strong country, not look at the stock market, right? He's signaling that that's his priority, is rebuilding that industrial heartland of the United States. Now, whether that's doable or not, as you guys point out, is a huge open question. Whether it's doable in any kind of time frame that lines up with political and economic reality is another question. But that's the goal that they're setting out to do here. It's a sweeping change, and it's not the sort of Chamber of Commerce, George W. Bush Republican Party that we've seen in past decades. This is a Republican Party that's very focused, again, on family and communities and workers. And that's a totally different approach.